Hey everyone. So today we're going to be talking about slackers. You guys know them. We all seem to have at least one in our office, and it's super frustrating. Working with someone who doesn't pull their weight at the office can be extremely frustrating. It can create extra stress and lead to a lot of animosity in the workplace, and it's not good for anyone, right? You might be stuck putting in extra hours to cover for them, finding yourself doing projects that aren't your job, or maybe you just feel like you're the only one who's really working. And even if you go home on time or you're still able to take lunch every day, you may find yourself feeling resentful, watching that coworker who doesn't seem like they're that busy, texting their friends, or shopping on Amazon, or maybe scrolling through endless TikTok videos while you feel like you're the one that's kind of working yourself to death. And even worse, it can really feel like management never does anything about these people, or even rewards the person that you feel is not putting in the most amount of work. And sometimes it can also feel like the attorney is even protecting the person that you are perceiving as the slacker, and sometimes even punishes the person who is the one that speaks up and complains, even if they're just trying to get assistance with the situation, and try to resolve it. So it can be very frustrating. And honestly, this is a very common complaint that we hear about in the Perfectly Paralegal community pretty frequently. And it's also a situation that I have definitely experienced myself as well over the course of my career. Now, I wanted to point out, first of all, that just because your perception is that the person is slacking, it may not necessarily line up with what is exactly going on. Some people work differently in different ways. Some people use different processes to get that work done. And, also maybe some people are just setting healthy boundaries, and that may make people who are not setting healthy boundaries feel like they're working a lot harder, which they may well be doing, but it might be something that you're bringing on yourself, or it's kind of your own doing. So there's really kind of a lot of different factors that are going on here. Now, also, I know that every situation is different. Sometimes there is literally nothing that can be done. The person just wants to get paid. They don't want to do any work. And maybe when it comes down to it, they shouldn't even have been hired in the first place. Sometimes it's a lost cause, but there's always hopefully something that you can do to make the situation better. I will tell you that I've kind of worked with people, of pretty much every type throughout the course of my career, but I have worked with some true slackers who, honestly, I don't even know what they were thinking, but there definitely was no turning that situation around. And it was really just a matter of that the person should never have been hired in the first place. But that's not always the case. So we're going to talk about a couple of different things that you might be able to do, not necessarily to resolve the problem with that person themselves, but at least to resolve your stress and frustration of dealing with that situation. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips for not only hopefully resolving this issue, but also holding on to your sanity, and then hopefully promoting greater efficiency and teamwork as well. So first, I want you to make sure that you're focusing on productivity. Even though it's super, super frustrating to feel like you are the only one working, realistically, you probably aren't. So start out by putting your emotions aside and figuring out whether your coworker's behavior is actually impacting your ability to do your job. Otherwise, it's probably not worth, your time or the aggravation to really pursue the issue. And it really may just be a case of that it's better for you to let it go, right? Because even if you are annoyed or frustrated because you can see them on the other side of the room watching videos on TikTok, you have to ask yourself, how is this actually impacting you outside of the fact that it's extremely frustrating and super annoying? So while we may feel like the person isn't always pulling their weight, that may not be the case depending on the situation. And even if that is the case, it may not necessarily be our problem or, our situation to resolve. There may be other facts that are at play, even if you're not aware of them, there may be something else that's going on. So the first thing that you definitely want to make sure to do is to really have an honest conversation with yourself about how this is actually impacting you outside of just being frustrated with the situation, right? Because that's one thing, but is it actually causing more work for you? Are you having to do extra work in order to pick up the slack of this person that you perceive who is not working? Do you find yourself coming in early or skipping lunch or maybe having to stay late at the end of the day because you have to pick up the slack for this other person? And if you are, the first thing that I would recommend is to take really an honest look at how that came about and how that happened. So did you insert yourself into the situation and take on more work because you saw that, the work was not getting done or that the person wasn't working efficiently enough? And so this is really a problem with a lot of paralegals, and not a bad thing. I have the same problem, but I'm a very proactive problem solver. Okay, if I see a problem, I want to fix it. Even if it's not necessarily my problem to fix, it's just that's the way that I am. And many paralegals are the same way. So we're really quick to jump in when we see a problem, even if it's really not our problem, to kind of go ahead and fix it. So the first thing that you want to look at is, how did you kind of become responsible for picking up the slack for this person? Did you volunteer, or did you kind of insert yourself into the situation in order to be proactive to try to resolve the problem? And if so, you may want to step back and let that person handle their own responsibilities, even if you know deep inside that that means that the work is not going to get done. And I know that that's easier said than done. Like I said, I'm like many of you, I am quick to jump into the mess and to try to, solve the problem and resolve the situation. And sometimes it just feels like it's faster and easier just to do it yourself and just kind of push the other person aside and just get it done, because you feel like at the end of the day, if they don't do it, you're going to have to do it anyway, or you're going to have to clean up the mess. So if you got yourself into that situation by kind of inserting yourself or by volunteering or kind of, just taking over, then get yourself right back out of that situation, right? Just take a couple of steps back, let that person be responsible for their own work, and just let it fall on them, okay? It doesn't matter if they fail. That's not, your problem. Let them fail if that's what's going to happen. But if you don't give them the opportunity to fail, then that actually could be one of the problems that's leading to them kind of slacking on the job. Now, if your attorney or your supervisor actually kind of put you in charge of helping them or asked you to help them, specifically with something, start kind of documenting how much time you're actually spending on work that isn't necessarily yours, okay? If it's something that can be handled quickly and easily, then maybe you just need to take a step back and kind of think about whether this is really an emotional burden that you're putting on yourself, or if it's an actual work burden, okay? Sometimes it can feel like a much bigger deal than it actually is, just because you kind of are already annoyed and you're already frustrated and you already feel like you're doing so much work and this person is really not doing a lot. So, that can make it seem worse, and it can seem like so much more than it actually is, okay? So take a step back and take the emotions out of it, and you may see that it's just something really small that can be done really quickly and actually can kind of be done and over with in less time than it took you to be kind of annoyed about it. Now, if the extra work is actually like really causing a big problem for you, maybe it's causing you to have to come in early, it's causing you to skip lunch, it's causing you to stay late and all of that, then you definitely kind of need to take some further action. But I definitely would say to first try to take your emotions out of it and just, be realistic as to the impact. If it's not directly impacting you, other than the fact that you're like super annoyed because you feel like you're working harder and you feel like this person is not doing anything except watching TikTok videos 8 hours a day and getting paid the same as you, or maybe even worse, that you feel like they're getting paid more than you, that's kind of one thing, versus if it's actually impacting you in the amount of work that you're actually doing, that's another thing. Now, the next thing that I would recommend that you do is evaluate the context. So laziness is not, of course, the only reason why employees neglect their responsibility. So your coworker could be slowed down by a chronic illness, or maybe they've got troubles going on at home. Okay, a lot of people have outside influences that are weighing them down that can impact everything that's going on in the office. And sometimes getting to the root cause of whatever is going on can really have a big impact on the situation. So especially if it's someone who has been, reliable up to a point, and all of a sudden their performance has started slipping, or they just don't seem to have the same passion for the work, or you notice other issues that are going on, it's very likely that something could be happening in their personal life that maybe you're not aware of. Maybe they have an illness, maybe a loved one, is sick, or there could be any number of things going on. So it may just be a case of that the person needs to take a step back, maybe take a couple of days off to kind of get the situation under control, or to deal with whatever the issue is that they're going through. And then they can kind of jump back in and get back on track, and hopefully things can start getting back to normal. So if you feel comfortable having that conversation with them, it could definitely bring you closer and maybe help you guys work together and figure out a way to resolve that situation. And again, like I said earlier, there are some people that are just beyond assistance, right? Many of us have worked with someone that just like literally shouldn't even have been working there in the first place. It's very clear that no matter what you do, the situation is not going to get resolved. So, it kind of really depends on what's going on here. But even though it can be frustrating to take on someone else's responsibilities, even if it's temporary, a little bit of compassion can really go a long way. And I think sometimes we have to stop and kind of put ourselves in that person's shoes and have just a little bit of compassion for what they might be going through. And obviously this is not going to apply to everyone, but maybe they just need someone to show them a little bit of compassion, to show them that they're not alone in whatever it is that they're going through, and just to kind of help them like push forward and get through that. And again, that may mean having them take a couple of days off, or maybe they take a week or even 2 weeks off to kind of get back on track and deal with the issue that they're going through. And who knows, like in the end, it might help strengthen your relationship with your coworkers, and hopefully ultimately you guys are going to be able to be an even stronger team once this situation gets resolved. So if you feel comfortable talking to them, and if you feel like you're ready to have that conversation, I would just recommend that you focus on working together to find a solution. It really, again, comes back to keeping emotions out of it so that you can speak kind of factually and not be like finger pointing and making accusations and things like that. So you want to definitely make sure to keep things professional and productive, and stick to, how can we resolve these issues so that we can work together. Now, if this doesn't work, another thing that you may need to consider doing is revising or switching up your workflow. So perhaps the issue is that your coworker feels uncomfortable with a certain aspect of the job. Maybe they need more training, or they lack the confidence needed for doing a specific task that they're working on. And that kind of apprehension or lack of confidence is causing them to kind of put it off or drag their feet because really they're uncomfortable and they don't know what they're doing. So one suggestion that I would give you is is restructuring the work environment possible? Okay, is there a task that your coworker is struggling with that maybe you can do with your eyes closed? And maybe you'd even prefer to do it if you got out of that mindset of, I don't want to do that person's work, or I don't want to pick up the slack for this person. Maybe if you kind of take that emotion out of it, you might find that this might actually be a task that you are better suited to do and that you would prefer doing. And then maybe there's some tasks that you are doing that the other coworker may feel more confident in doing. Okay, so we all have different skill levels. We all have different experience. It's funny because I actually just experienced this myself in my current position, and actually in all of my positions, I have never been responsible for scheduling and coordinating IMEs. And one of my coworkers is out of the office at the moment, and they asked me to coordinate an IME. And even though I've been a paralegal for like 23, 24 years, I've actually never contacted a doctor's office to coordinate an IME before. And so I was actually uncomfortable when I was doing it because I really didn't know like what information I was going to have to give them or what documents I would have to provide. And I did kind of drag my feet a little bit in calling them because I just, was kind of like, oh, I don't know what information I'm going to have to provide to them. I don't know what they're going to ask me. I don't know what the schedule is going to be. I don't know how to, like all this kind of different information. And so for me, even though I've been a paralegal for a long time and it's kind of a relatively simple, like call a doctor's office and schedule an IME, but just because I hadn't done it before, there was kind of a lot of uncertainty for me because I just didn't know, what type of information I was going to have to provide and stuff like that. So what you can think about is there tasks that your coworker is doing that maybe they don't have confidence, or maybe they don't have the right education, or maybe they just need some refreshers in how to do something? So is it possible to either approach them about maybe, hey, do you need a refresher in how to do this? Or would you feel more comfortable if I walked you through it again? Would that kind of help you feel like a little bit more confident when doing this task? Or take a look at your own list of responsibilities and see if there's things there that maybe you would like to get off your plate, and maybe you guys can kind of switch things up and play to your strengths. Okay, so finding that sweet spot might be the answer to your problems. And of course, this is not going to work in every firm. It really depends on how the work is structured. But you may find that there is a way to get creative by switching up the responsibilities in a way that will benefit all of you. And it also gives you the opportunity as well, if there's something that you don't enjoy doing, to get that off your plate. All right, so if none of this works, it just may be time that you have, that kind of all-important conversation with your boss. Like I mentioned at the beginning, it seems that a lot of attorneys just don't want to deal with the stress of like dealing with coworkers who are not getting along for any reason, including that one person thinks that they're working a lot harder than the other person. So I have found generally that attorneys really don't like to deal with these issues, and they would rather just kind of let things go as they are, even if they're not working as well as they could be, because the attorney just doesn't want to deal with them, right? So I would say that if it comes to this, where you have to go to your attorney and have this conversation with them, make sure to focus on productivity. Keep your emotions out of it and stick to the facts, okay? So give actual examples of issues and how they impact your workload. Don't go into the attorney's office and say something like, oh my God, I'm so annoyed because so-and-so is like not doing anything and I'm literally the only person here working. Okay, that's probably not going to get you the response or the action that you really want to accomplish. So definitely keep your emotional perspective out of things and really focus on actionable facts and suggestions that may be able to kind of resolve the problem. So don't just go in there and say like, oh, let's fire this person because I'm doing all their work anyway. That's probably not going to happen unless this is not your first conversation about it. So you definitely want to go in with actual solutions on how you can kind of resolve this problem. So perhaps you can provide the person with additional training or other support that they need, or what other steps do you think based on your team can be taken? Now, again, sometimes firing the person literally is the only answer, but if you storm into your attorney's office and demand that someone gets fired because you feel like you're working harder than they are, it's probably not going to get you the, result that you want. All right, so here are a few ideas that you can kind of bring to the table in order to hopefully turn this situation around. The first is bring the team together and discuss kind of the mission in the office. Employees generally will feel more engaged and motivated if they understand the purpose behind their activities. So you definitely want to talk about their efforts and how they contribute to the firm, how they help the clients, and also how they contribute to the important work that the firm is doing. It really can make a difference. The next thing that you want to do is clarify roles. Make sure that each employee has their unique responsibilities that they have to do in order to increase their accountability. You want to design tasks that leverage their personal strengths. And, perhaps the coworker is just in over their head or they're not feeling challenged. So you really need to figure out specifically why they are doing what they're doing or why they're not doing what they're not doing. The next thing that you can do is make sure that you have measurable goals. Some employees can underperform if the standards really aren't clear. So if you're just leaving it up to them to decide what, is considered to be like a good level of work for them, they may not know what that level should be. So you want to set targets that they can aim for and, actual things that they can accomplish. And this may take the shape of a billing quota in many firms for paralegals, but it can also be as simple as, setting the standard that your email inbox should be, pretty much empty as much as possible at the end of the day, or making sure that the filing is 100% up to date, or that other workflows, whatever they are followed within a specific time period. So you want to provide goals that can actually be followed. And this will also make it easier to spot when people are slacking. Now, you also want to reward progress, okay? So you always want to let your coworkers, and this can come from the attorney, this can come from the office manager, but it can also come from you, okay? You always want to let your coworkers know when their accomplishments are noticed and appreciated. You can take a minute to praise someone for, writing a great memo, or even for the fact that they got medical records like super fast in a new case, or whatever it is. A lot of times we are really, really quick to tell people what they're doing wrong or like what we're not happy about. And we a lot of times don't take the time to tell someone the positive or what they're doing right. So that really actually can have a big impact on people. The next thing is offering training. If your coworkers are falling behind because they're unsure of their abilities, then the firm should provide resources in order for them to be able to upgrade their skills. So that could be signing them up for a class, a CLE, a training, a workshop, or anything to help them learn those necessary skills, or just to give them the additional confidence that they may need to get that work done. Okay, so many firms are really quick to over-educate or to provide education for attorneys, but don't always really think about taking the time to make sure that their support staff are educated and, kind of kept up to date with all everything. I mean, it's not just continuing legal education, but empowerment, confidence, just goal setting, anything that can help you be a more productive member of the team. Okay, so it doesn't have to be continuing legal education. It can literally be how to meditate on your lunch break to help you relieve stress. I mean, there's a lot of different things that play a role in being a healthy employee that firms can provide for us. And if they're not providing it, we really have to take the initiative to get that information for ourselves, but it really should be expected from our employers. And many times we just don't ask. Okay, so if your employer is not taking care of you or your coworkers as far as education and making sure that your skills are kept sharp and things like that, don't hesitate to ask, okay? There's a lot of really kind of easy and inexpensive things that you can do in order to increase those skills and increase your confidence. And a lot of times this honestly can be an issue as to why someone is like slacking or not getting their work done. And it really is a very simple problem to fix if you want to fix it. Okay, so properly supervising your team is another one, and this is really a tricky one, I feel like. So of course, we all know that attorneys are required to supervise their support staff, but let's be honest, a lot of times attorneys are not supervising us to the level that they, maybe should be if people are slacking, because they put so much trust into us as their team, okay? So they're not necessarily supervising us like in every little tiny thing, because they're trusting that we're doing what they're asking us to do, or we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And, they're just not doing it, honestly. And this is why when somebody leaves, there always seems to be this kind of like huge discovery of all the stuff that they never did, right? We've talked about this in the group, and I've experienced this myself, where somebody leaves and they were like great, and then they left, and all of a sudden, or maybe they were just a slacker and you knew that they were a slacker, and then they left, and you start looking in their drawers or you start looking in the files, and you're like, oh my God, there's so much stuff here that was never done, was never filed, was never sent to the court, was never sent to whoever it was supposed to do, and it just wasn't done. And I personally had this situation many years ago in a firm that I used to work for, where the young lady who was the legal secretary, this is before e-filing, we would walk everything to court to get it filed with the clerk and bring back the copy. Nobody ever noticed that she was never bringing back the copies, and nobody ever noticed that most of the things that she was supposed to take to court were never getting filed. And there were just kind of excuses after excuses. When hearings were not set, it was always, oh, the clerk is not calling me back, or the JA is not calling me, or I've requested and they're not answering, and all this kind of stuff. Well, when she finally was terminated because of a bunch of problems that was happening, when they opened her desk drawers, they basically found all these original pleadings, mail, FedExes, CDs, stuff that was supposed to go to the court, courtesy copies that were supposed to go to the judges, and all this other information that literally she was just putting it in the bottom of her drawer underneath some other stuff just to hide it. And because nobody was like following through to like make sure the work was actually getting done, it just went on and on for like a long time, because she wasn't like supervised as closely as she could have been supervised. And so this is really, I say that it's a tricky situation because we're professionals. We want to be treated like professionals. We don't want to be micromanaged. If the attorney tells me to do something, I want him to trust that I'm going to do it. And I don't want him to have to ask, come back and ask me, if I did it, like, of course I did it. The problem is that not everyone can work that way, and some people do need to be supervised. And so when you start seeing that you have these types of problems, if somebody is slacking, or if work is not getting done, or if stuff is not going out, then they do need to be supervised more. And some people just do need to be supervised and be supervised more closely and be held accountable for the responsibilities that they actually have to do. So even though as professionals, we don't always want to be, we don't want to be micromanaged and like supervised to like this crazy level. But at the same time, sometimes that's what needs to happen. If you have someone who is struggling with, not being able to get their work done for whatever reason it's happening for, it may definitely benefit from kind of a heightened level of supervision. But you also have to be careful, because if you're the coworker and you're not the boss or you're not the supervisor, it may not necessarily be your place to be the one that's constantly supervising and constantly monitoring. Okay, so that's really a situation that has to happen, on a case-by-case basis to see like how can you find a good balance. So the next suggestion is to ask for input. And basically, if you're not sure how to proceed, one of the easiest things is just have a conversation with the person. Why are they struggling? Where are they struggling? Do they feel like they need more direction? Do they feel like they need more supervision? Some people just need to have someone on them, telling them this is what you need to do and let me see it when you're done, or, this is what you need to do. And when you're done, then this is what you need to do. So some people just really do need that extra level of supervision in order for them to keep moving forward. Or it might be something as simple as the workspace is too distracting. The workspace is too quiet. They're chit-chatting with other people, and it might actually be someone else who is kind of influencing that poor behavior in the workplace. So checking in with them, like, don't be afraid to have a conversation with that person and say, listen, like I said, keep emotions out of it, but this is what I'm noticing. Like, how can we support you to make sure that you feel confident and that you are secure and you have the skills that you need to keep moving forward? What is it that we can do to just make you the best member of this team that you can be? And sometimes just consulting with them can make them feel more engaged with the team and can empower them to ask for help if they need help. And then finally, cyber slacking. Of course, the internet is out here. You guys can hear, I'm sure, my messenger from my bestie Carol is just pinging away. The internet has spawned obviously so many more ways to kind of waste time while you're on the clock. Supervisors, of course, should always set a good example by limiting non-work related internet activities in, the firm. It definitely can be frustrating when you're trying to get work done, or you're trying to get your office manager or your attorney to accomplish something, and you can see the screen and you see that they're on the internet doing, whatever, and they're not getting the work done. The firm may need to put policies into place limiting, certain websites, or putting kind of a time limit. And again, this is another tricky one, because as professionals, we do not want to be micromanaged, and we don't, we want to be treated like adults. We don't want attorneys telling us you cannot go on Facebook, or you cannot check your personal email, or you cannot get text messages from your kids. We just want to be treated like adults, and we want to be able to kind of have a little bit of flexibility to do a little bit of those things, as long as our work is getting done and we're not impacting other people. But I think that we can all agree that probably, spending 2 hours doom scrolling on Facebook, or spending an hour, watching TikTok videos is probably not the best way to be spending time when you're getting paid to be at work, although a lot of us do it. So you kind of have to find that balance, right? So these are all things that you should be doing for yourself in order to set a good example, and you should be doing or kind of helping to implement with your coworkers. But I also want to take this opportunity to remind you that you are a paid employee of someone else's business, okay? If you take nothing else away from this conversation today, please remember, you are one person. You can only do so much, okay? Many of us are so heavily involved in our jobs that we get so personally involved in what everyone is doing and how the business is run and who is on Facebook and who is, taking a nap during their lunch break, or who was 5 minutes late getting their coffee, or whatever. So I want to tell you that you should feel empowered to kind of take a step back, okay? Realize that this is not your business. These are not your clients, and these are not your cases. You are being paid to perform a job and to do it amazingly well. Absolutely. Okay. I want you all to be amazing at your jobs. All of the people who probably are watching this right now, and so many of the people that I talk to every day on Facebook or LinkedIn, and certainly my amazing circle of peers and amazing paralegals that are out there, you guys are freaking amazing at your jobs, okay? You are killing it. You are just amazing at what you do. But that doesn't change the fact that you are being paid to do work in exchange for a paycheck. Okay, so at the end of the day, be the best employee, the best paralegal, the best legal assistant, whatever position you are in. Be the best that you can be, but also recognize that you can be an amazingly dedicated professional doing an incredible job while also coming in on time, okay? Taking a lunch break, leaving on time at the end of the day, not answering your phone after hours, not checking your email 24/7. You can and you should set healthy boundaries so that you are working the hours that you're paid to work, and then you're going home and you're doing whatever you want. You want to have 10 glasses of wine, have 10 glasses of wine. You want to have a second job, you want to start your own business, you want to hang out on Facebook, you want to make TikTok videos, I don't care. You want to pick a hobby, whatever it is that you're doing. But don't, set boundaries, like take breaks, work so that you can live an amazing life. Don't spend your life working to work someone else's business, okay? So a lot of times when you are frustrated because somebody else is a slacker, it's usually because you are not feeling appreciated and you feel like you're working more than they are, which may be true. But are you working more than they are because they are setting healthy boundaries? It's possible. Now, again, every situation is different. I'm not saying that there aren't slackers out there, but I'm saying that you don't have to be kind of like the hero of the business where you are killing yourself for someone else's business. And if you are frustrated because you are perceiving that someone else is a slacker, there are a lot of things that you can do about it. But the number one thing that you should do about it is recognize that you too can set healthy boundaries so that you are not feeling overworked and underappreciated. And a lot of times that is the problem. So if you take nothing else from this conversation today, I hope that you will feel empowered to take a step back and set some healthy boundaries for yourself. And then be sure to join us in the Perfectly Paralegal group so that we can continue this conversation there. Thank you so much, you guys, for tuning in. This was probably like twice as long as I thought it was going to be, but I hope that you got some great information from it. And I look forward to chatting with you guys in the comments.